The moment the word police is said, everything changes. This isn't just another argument. This isn't family drama. Because suddenly, someone mentions jail. And not just for Sumit, for Jenny too. You can literally see it on her face, that exact second when fear replaces everything else. Confusion, panic, shock. Because Jenny isn't in America. She's thousands of miles away, in a country where she doesn't fully understand the system, surrounded by people who are angry enough to make this feel real. And in that moment, one question hits harder than anything else. Did she just risk everything for a relationship that was never stable to begin with? She left her entire life behind. Her family, her home, her security, all for Sumit. But now, with threats of legal consequences, hidden truths resurfacing, and emotional cracks getting deeper, fans are starting to ask something that no one wanted to say out loud before. Is Jenny finally done? Because this doesn't feel like one more fight. This feels like the moment everything starts falling apart. Link. The scene doesn't open with affection or nostalgia, it opens with tension, thick enough to feel through the screen. Jenny is standing in a house that suddenly feels unfamiliar, the same walls that once held. Quiet conversations and hopeful plans now echo with raised voices. Someone is angry, someone is threatening consequences, and suddenly the conversation shifts into something far more serious than family disagreement. The word police enters the room. Another voice mentions jail, not just for Sumit, for Jenny too. And just like that, the air changes. Because this is no longer about hurt feelings or cultural tension. Now there are threats of legal trouble, and for Jenny, that possibility carries a special kind of fear. She's not standing in her home country. She's thousands of miles away from the legal system she understands, surrounded by people who are furious and speaking with a certainty that makes everything feel real. Jenny looks shocked, confused. The same sentence slips out again and again as if repeating it might somehow fix the situation. She didn't know. She insists she didn't know he was married. If she didn't know, how could she possibly be guilty? But panic doesn't care about logic. In moments like this, reason becomes background noise. What matters is the immediate fear that something much bigger than relationship drama might be unfolding. A woman who crossed an ocean for love suddenly finds herself wondering if she might face legal consequences for it. This isn't romantic tension. It's survival instinct kicking in. And that moment quietly reshapes the entire story of Jenny and Sumit. For years, their relationship was framed as a rebellious love story. Two people refusing to bow to criticism. A couple pushing against cultural expectations, family pressure, and endless judgment from outsiders who believed the relationship was doomed. From a distance, it looked like a dramatic but inspiring battle for love. But scenes like this expose a different reality. This relationship didn't just face opposition. It was unstable from the very beginning. The threats, the shouting, the panic in Jenny's voice, all of it forces a series of uncomfortable questions into the open. What exactly caused this situation to explode so quickly? Was this chaos the result of a misunderstanding? Or the consequence of secrets that had been hiding beneath the surface? And most importantly, who in this relationship has been fully honest from the start? Those questions matter because Jenny didn't just fall for Sumit. She built her life around him. She left the United States behind. Her daughters stayed there. Her grandchildren stayed there. Everything familiar, everything comfortable, everything secure was traded for the promise that this relationship would work. That is not a small decision. It's the kind of decision people make when they believe they've found something permanent. But when Jenny made that choice, she was trusting someone who was already hiding the biggest truth of all. Sumit was married. That revelation didn't simply damage trust for a moment, it planted doubt at the foundation of everything that followed. From that point forward, the relationship carried two competing narratives. Some viewers see Jenny as someone who loved deeply enough to forgive a massive betrayal. A woman who believed the emotional connection was stronger than the lie that introduced it. Others see something different. They see someone who ignored warning signs because she wanted the relationship to succeed so badly that walking away felt impossible. Both interpretations still exist, and that tension has never fully disappeared. It simply faded into the background while the couple pushed forward through scandal, family, rejection, and endless criticism. Through every setback, Jenny stayed, even when the truth hurt, even when the situation became humiliating, even when it would have been easier to leave. Each time the relationship reached a breaking point, she chose to remain, which creates a question that now hangs quietly over everything. Did Jenny stay because the love truly justified every sacrifice? Or did she stay because leaving would mean confronting the possibility that everything she gave up was for something that was never stable to begin with? That answer hasn't arrived yet. The biggest confrontation in this story isn't happening between Jenny and Sumit's parents. It isn't even happening between Jenny and Sumit themselves. The real confrontation is much quieter. It's the moment where reality begins asking whether love alone can support the weight of everything that has already happened. And judging by the tension building now, that moment may already be closer than anyone expected. To understand why that chaotic moment feels heavier than previous drama, the timeline has to rewind to the very start of their connection. Long before television cameras arrived, long before families were arguing on screen, back when their relationship existed only through messages and late-night conversations. Online. Because the beginning of Jenny and Sumit's story wasn't built on a solid introduction. It started with something far more fragile, a fake identity. When Sumit first contacted Jenny, he didn't present himself as the person he actually was. The name was different. The background was different. Even the image attached to the profile was someone else entirely. It was the kind of online deception that normally ends relationships instantly once the truth surfaces. And eventually, the truth did surface. When viewers later learned about the deception, the reaction was almost universal. Most people assumed the story would end right there. A lie that big usually shuts the door. Except this time, it didn't. Jenny chose to stay. Instead of cutting ties, she accepted his apology and continued the relationship. That decision changed everything that came after. From that point forward, their relationship wasn't defined by how it began. It was defined by how much they were willing to endure to keep it alive. Jenny made it clear that she believed the connection between them was genuine, even if the introduction was not. To some people, that looked like unconditional love. To others, it looked like the first sign that the foundation of the relationship might always carry cracks. Because forgiveness is powerful, but it doesn't erase patterns. And patterns slowly reveal themselves over time. One of the most visible contradictions appeared in the way Sumit talked about love. Compared with the way he handled family expectations, he repeatedly insisted that Jenny meant everything to him. Yet, his life remained deeply influenced by his parents' approval. In many traditional Indian families, parents play a central role in decisions about relationships and marriage. Their opinions are not simply suggestions. They often shape the entire path of a person's adult life. That meant Sumit constantly stood between two emotional responsibilities: the woman he loved and the family that raised him. Finding balance between those two forces was never simple. Instead of resolving the conflict quickly, it often stretched out across months and years. There were moments when he defended Jenny strongly and made it clear that she was his priority. There were also moments when he hesitated, delayed decisions, or tried to calm both sides, rather than choosing one direction completely. For Jenny, those delays sometimes felt like standing alone in a battle she thought they were fighting together. Yet despite all of that tension, their relationship kept moving forward. Eventually, after years of arguments, secrets, and complicated conversations, Sumit married her. That moment looked like the final victory in a long struggle. But marriage didn't erase the deeper conflict surrounding them. His parents still struggled to accept the relationship. Their age difference continued to draw criticism, and Jenny was still living thousands of miles away from her original support system. Those realities didn't disappear just because rings were exchanged. Instead, they quietly settled into everyday life. And everyday life has a way of revealing things that constant conflict can hide. For a long time, the relationship was fueled by the act of fighting against outside pressure. Every obstacle pushed them closer together because they were defending the relationship from criticism. But once the biggest battles slowed down, something else took its place. Routine. And routine can expose weaknesses that dramatic moments never show. Routine asks questions that don't appear during emotional confrontations. Can the relationship handle ordinary life? Not rebellion, not dramatic declarations, just normal days. Shared responsibilities, aging together, making plans for the future. Those questions carry extra weight in Jenny's situation. At this stage of life, many people start prioritizing stability and comfort. Being close to family becomes more meaningful. Health and financial security start shaping decisions about where to live. But Jenny's world in India is built almost entirely around Sumit. If tension appears in the relationship, the circle of emotional support around her is small. Isolation can amplify every disagreement. Meanwhile, Sumit's connection to his family and cultural environment remains strong. Even after marriage, completely separating himself from that world isn't an easy option, which creates a quiet but powerful question. If Jenny feels increasingly alone in India, how long can she continue choosing love over familiarity and comfort? And if Sumit continues trying to balance both sides of his life, how much pressure can that balancing act carry before something gives way? These questions have started to gain attention again for one reason. Whispers about Jenny possibly returning to the United States have begun circulating among viewers and observers. Nothing has been confirmed, but the possibility alone shifts the entire conversation. Because if Jenny ever decides to return to America permanently, the relationship enters unfamiliar territory. Physical distance doesn't automatically destroy relationships, but distance has a way of revealing truths quickly. And if that decision ever becomes real, the next chapter of their story could look very different from everything that came before. Step back from the individual arguments, the dramatic confrontations, the loud moments that grab attention on television. When the noise fades and the timeline stretches out, a pattern slowly becomes visible. In many ways, Jenny's role in the relationship has been defined by sacrifice. Sumit's role has often revolved around managing the consequences. Jenny gives something up. Sumit tries to calm the situation that follows. For years, that dynamic seemed to function, mainly because both of them were pushing against forces outside the relationship. Their bond was strengthened by the act of defending it. Every argument with family, every judgment from strangers, every criticism from viewers created a kind of shared battlefield. They were united by resistance. But once the biggest storms began to settle, something else became easier to notice: the imbalance underneath it all. Jenny had already made the biggest move imaginable. She left the United States and stepped into a completely different world. Her independence shifted overnight. Financial certainty became less predictable. The everyday presence of her daughters and grandchildren disappeared. Those aren't small adjustments. They are life-altering decisions that reshape how a person builds their future. And decisions that big come with expectations, even if those expectations are never spoken aloud. When someone restructures their entire life for a relationship, the relationship quietly becomes the center of everything that follows. Meanwhile, Sumit never left the environment he grew up in. His country remained the same. His social surroundings remained familiar. His connection to family traditions stayed close. Two very different starting points began shaping the same marriage. For Jenny, the success of the relationship became closely tied to the life she was now living in India. For Sumit, life in India continued along a path he already understood. Neither position makes either person the villain in the story, but it does create a difference in what each person stands to lose. If Jenny ever chooses to leave India for good, the impact on her life would be enormous. She would essentially rebuild a future once again, reconnecting with the environment she left behind years earlier. For Sumit, the decision would demand something equally heavy. He would have to decide whether love is strong enough to follow Jenny across continents or whether his life remains rooted where it has always been. At this point, the audience watching their story often starts to feel pulled in two directions. Jenny's sacrifices are impossible to ignore. Anyone who gives up that much stability for love naturally becomes the emotional center of the narrative. Yet when attention shifts towards Sumit's situation, the picture becomes more complex. Choosing Jenny meant confronting intense resistance from his parents. That decision already reshaped his relationship with them in ways that may never fully heal. In many cultures, conflict with parents isn't a temporary disagreement that fades away after a few arguments. It can permanently alter family dynamics. For Sumit, supporting his marriage has often meant creating distance from the people who raised him. That emotional weight continues long after the cameras stop recording. Love has a strange way of doing that. It brings two people together while quietly pulling them away from other parts of their lives. Another pattern slowly emerges when their actions are compared. Jenny tends to view the relationship through emotional commitment. Her decisions reflect a belief that love demands bold choices and clear loyalty. Sumit often approaches the situation from a place of balance. He tries to ease tension rather than force hard divisions. Instead of choosing one side completely, he often attempts to soften the impact on both sides. Those approaches don't always fit together smoothly. Emotional loyalty often demands decisive action. Balance often tries to avoid it, and the space between those two perspectives has shaped many of their most difficult moments. Now place one more element on top of everything else: visibility. Their entire relationship has unfolded in front of a massive audience. Every secret, every confrontation, every painful discovery has been discussed publicly by millions of viewers. Walking away from the relationship now would not exist only as a private decision between two people. It would instantly become a story. That kind of attention can keep couples together longer than they might stay under normal circumstances. The pressure to prove critics wrong can quietly influence choices, but eventually, personal peace becomes more valuable than public approval, which leads back to the question that now sits quietly at the center of everything. If Jenny is considering a return to America, what is truly driving that thought? Is it a signal that the relationship has reached its limit, or is it a moment of distance she needs in order to understand whether the marriage still has a future? Those possibilities may appear similar on the surface, but emotionally, they point toward very different outcomes. And at this point, the answer remains hidden. If Jenny ever chooses to return to the United States for good, the impact won't be limited to distance on a map. It would represent a turning point in a story that has stretched across years of emotional investment and personal risk. Walking away from India wouldn't simply mean buying a plane ticket and packing a suitcase. It would mean confronting everything that happened along the way, every decision that led her there, every argument she endured, every moment where people insisted the relationship would collapse. Through all of that, Jenny remained steady. She defended Sumit when people doubted his intentions. She stood by him when the truth about his secret marriage surfaced. She stayed when his parents openly rejected their relationship. She stayed even when living in a different country left her feeling isolated and emotionally drained. Each of those moments required determination, and every time she chose to stay, the story of their relationship grew stronger in her mind, which leads to a difficult possibility. What if part of the reason Jenny remained committed for so long wasn't only about love? What if it was also about protecting the meaning of the choices she had already made? Human nature pushes people to defend the paths they take, especially when those paths require enormous sacrifice. When someone leaves their home, their family, and their sense of stability for a relationship, the idea of walking away later can feel like erasing the purpose behind those sacrifices. Admitting that something didn't work out after giving up so much can feel heavier than staying and continuing to fight for it. But time introduces new realities. Love alone doesn't answer practical questions. Health becomes more important as the years pass. Financial security becomes more important. Access to family support becomes more important. Jenny is now entering a phase of life where stability often takes priority over adventure. And stability can be difficult to maintain when a relationship continues to sit at the center of cultural conflict and uncertainty. While Jenny may be wrestling with those questions, Sumit faces a different emotional crossroads. If Jenny were to leave India permanently, his next decision would carry enormous weight. He could remain in India, close to his family and the environment that shaped his life, knowing that doing so might slowly end the marriage. Or he could choose to follow Jenny to the United States, building a new life far away from the traditions and relationships that have defined him for years. Neither direction offers a simple outcome. Both require sacrifice. And relationships rarely thrive when both partners feel that every option forces them to give up something essential. Yet there is another possibility still on the table. The current tension might simply be another chapter in a relationship that has already survived extraordinary challenges. Jenny and Sumit have overcome situations that many couples would never recover from. Public embarrassment, constant criticism, family disapproval, legal complications. Again and again, they managed to rebuild their connection after moments that looked like final breaking points. That history is why longtime viewers remain divided about what comes next.